told you, China's rise wasn't sudden, wasn't lucky, and definitely wasn't accidental. It was planned, not for 5 years or 10 years, but for decades. Because what we're seeing today is not just growth, it's the result of a long term strategy that most of the world didn't fully understand until now. To understand this, we need to go back to 1978. At that time, China was not the global giant we see today. It was poor, economically weak, and largely cut off from the rest of the world. Millions of people were living in poverty, industries were underdeveloped, and compared to Western countries, China was far behind. Then everything started to change. China's leadership made a decision that shocked many people. Instead of completely rejecting capitalism, they decided to use it, but in a controlled way. They opened their economy, allowed foreign companies to invest, and slowly integrated into the global market. This was not a random move, it was strategic, because China didn't just want to grow fast, it wanted to learn. Every foreign company that entered China brought something valuable: technology, management skills, and global connections, and China absorbed it all quietly and systematically. While the world saw cheap labor and mass production, China was building something much bigger behind the scenes. Over time, it became the manufacturing hub of the world. From electronics to clothing, from machinery to everyday products, made in China was everywhere. But here's the important part. China never wanted to stay just a manufacturing country. That was only phase 1. Once it gained enough experience, capital, and infrastructure, it started moving to phase 2. Innovation. Today, China is investing heavily in artificial intelligence, robotics, space programs, and advanced technology. It is no longer just assembling products, it is designing them, improving them, and competing with the world's most advanced economies. So the question is, what is China ultimately trying to achieve? The answer lies in something called the China Dream. This is a long-term vision to make China the most powerful nation in the world by the year 2049. Not just economically, but also politically, technologically, and militarily. And to reach the goal, China is following a very different model compared to Western countries. Let's take infrastructure as an example. In many democracies, large projects take years of debate, approvals, and delays. But in China, decisions are faster, execution is faster, and results came faster. China has built at a scale the world has rarely seen, but it didn't stop within its borders. China started expanding outwards through a massive global project known as the Belt and Road Initiative. Under this initiative, China is investing in infrastructure projects across Asia, Africa, and Europe. Roads, railways, ports, energy systems, and all of that. On the surface, it looks like development support, and in many cases it is, but there's also a strategic layer to it. Because when a country depends on your investment, it also becomes connected to your influence. Now let's talk about the most important battlefield of the future, technology. Because the next global superpower won't just control land or oil, it will control data. China understands this very clearly. That's why it is investing billions into artificial intelligence, 5G networks, semiconductor technologies, and digital systems. The goal is simple: reduce dependence on the West and become self-sufficient in critical technologies. But this is where things get complicated, because China's system is very different from Western democracy. There is more government control, more surveillance, less individual freedom compared to many other countries. Supporters argue that this allows faster decision-making and rapid development. Critics argue that it comes at the cost of personal liberty, and this creates a bigger global question. Is China's model of development something other countries will follow, or is it a system that only works under strict control? Now zoom out for a moment, because this is not just about China. This is about a shift in global power. For decades, one country dominated the global system, but today the balance is changing. We are moving towards a world where multiple powers compete with each other, economically, technologically, and politically. And China is the center of this transformation. But here's something important most people miss. China doesn't always act in obvious ways. It doesn't always rely on direct confrontations. Instead, it plays a long game. It builds influence slowly, it invests strategically, and it plans for ahead into the future. This makes it different and also harder to predict. So when people ask, will China become the next superpower? Maybe that's the wrong question. A better question is, has China already started becoming one quietly? Because power today is not just about military strength. It's about supply chains, it's about technology, about global partnerships, and control over critical resources. And in many of these areas, China is already deeply involved. But this story is still unfinished. China faces its own challenges: economic pressures, global resistance, internal issues. And history has shown us that no country's rise is guaranteed forever.